Well, howdy everyone, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic out there, and the birds are chiming in today, I guess. So I figured I'd talk about something that I think is a very common, question or concern, or oftentimes put off, whatever you want to call it. But how much theory does a rock guitarist need? Now rock is to me the one style of music that I feel the most comfortable in. It's my favorite style of music to play, all that good stuff. But sometimes we run into people who either think it's important or not important at all, like who don't want to know any theory at all. And I figured we would talk about that, and you guys can let me know what you think down below. So I'll just jump into with it what I think. Alright, so the first thing that I'm just going to start off by saying that I think that theory is much like the language of guitar. Now, you can understand the language through expressions and stuff like that. Like if I played something, whether you've played guitar or not, if I go, something like that, it's either like shocking or you're just kind of like, whoa, what's happening? And you can tell by the emotion that it's emoting. But what exactly is happening there? So it's kind of like, you can go to Germany or something like that, and they can speak to you, and you might not speak German, but you can understand facial expressions and maybe like the energy that they're letting out. But how much better would you be able to understand them if you spoke German? Probably a lot better. So that's kind of the way I view the language of a guitar. Now, I by no means have a lot of theory under my fingers and stuff like that. Certainly watching guys like Paul Davids, Rick Beato, all that stuff the past few years has really encouraged me, just to kind of step back and be like, man, I need to know a little bit better what's going on. And I've spent a lot more time incorporating more knowledge, and not just learning licks and scales and stuff like that. So I think that it's incredibly crucial. But like I said, there's so many different degrees to it. So how much theory does someone want to, need to have? It's as much as you want to have, to be honest, as cliche as it might sound. But here's the thing, even a little bit of theory can be a huge help. And I'll tell you the first kind of like inclination that I had of how important theory was a simple power chord. Okay, so we play a power chord. I had someone show me this chord. It went like this. Straight up power chord. Sorry, I have delay and stuff going, but we'll just roll with it. A straight up power chord like that. Okay, so it's like, how do you make it sound bigger? Well, you could do the 3-finger version of it, which now, so that's just root 5th. Now I'm adding another root on here. So when you do something like that, you're adding another frequency. You have that higher one, and it's like, okay, it doesn't sound as big as I want. And what someone showed me, like I said, this is very early on, was that if you're doing a power chord on the A string, like that, and you hold down the string above it, so I'm going to hold down, if I'm doing this D power chord, 5 on the low E string. Oh, baby, that sounded big. And I was like, whoa, like how does that work? And they were just kind of like, well, what I'm doing is I'm taking how we added that extra root. He's like, well, I'm adding an extra 5th on the bass. And I was like, what's a 5th? I didn't know what any of that stuff meant years ago. And And he's like, oh, well, it's your note. That's a power chord. They're called 5 chords. So that's your root, that's your 5th, that's another root. Add your 5th right there. Now you have this huge sounding power chord. And I was like, oh, and this is right around when, you know, as I got into theory, I understood that notes don't have to always be in the same order, all this kind of stuff. But it really opened up a lot to me right there with that one thing where they're like, oh, I'm adding the 5th on the bass. It doesn't have to start on the root. I won't go any further for copyright purposes. And see, and at that same time, when I learned that I didn't know, I already had learned my pentatonic, I say learned, but I had started learning my pentatonic scale, the shapes, you know, and I mainly just knew the first 2 boxes. So I could kind of play and stuff like that, and I remember I was wanting to become a teacher. I was probably like 17 at this point or something. I was wanting to start teaching, and the teacher asked me that they were kind of like, a teacher who was there, he's like, well, you want to be a teacher? He's like, all right, well, let me ask you a few things, if you know how to do this. He's like, play me your E minor pentatonic scale. And I was like, oh, sweet. Bro, I got that, you know. And he was like, all right, play me your E major pentatonic scale. I was like, there's a major version of it? So even, right there, I was like, you know, these are all these light bulbs happening. And I was like, I need more theory. I need to understand this stuff more. And he showed me right there. He was just like, look, he's like, here's a real simple way to do it. He's like, you know, basically take your minor pentatonic and move it down 3 frets. He's like, now, it doesn't work the same way. Understand your roots have all shifted, your third, all that stuff is in different spots. So it's not laid out the same way, but you can do that. Some people consider this to be box 1 of your major pentatonic. If you're up here, essentially your box 2 minor shape. I view that still as 2. I kept everything the same. Simple rock guy. But regardless, you know, there were all these moments where I was like, oh wow, you know, I thought I knew some stuff, and not that I didn't know a little bit, but I realized how much I didn't understand the language. So there's very, very, you know, simple things you can do like that. So like going back to the chord thing, you know, say you know some of your basic chord inversions. If you're just kind of like, play like an A chord. Sorry. And then, okay, so here's an A. I'm like, all right. What else can I do with this A chord? And this is, again, I don't know a lot of theory, but with a little bit, you can do a lot. And I'm like, okay, so obviously I could go like this. That really doesn't change the voicing too much. I'm adding a 5th to the bass again. Then I'm basically working my way into a normal bar chord. But it's like, okay, but what if I added my 3rd in the bass? So if I went, it's a slightly different, you know, feel to that one. I'm like, okay. What if I wanted to change it to, I've done this in a video too, like an add 9. So I'm adding my 2 essentially. Okay, so I'm adding that B note. What if I wanted it to go to a sus2 chord, you know? Right there, don't add the E like I did by mistake. Maybe sus4. Down to major. Down to sus2. Maybe you're gonna do like a dominant 7 or something. There's so many things you can do. Like I said, a little bit helps understand the language so much. And even when you're like writing music, I'm not saying you have to base everything off of theory, all that stuff. I'm just saying it can help. And if anything, I know some people think, oh, you know, theory kills feel and all that kind of stuff, and just playing what you feel or hear inside. And I really disagree with that. You know, I'm not saying there aren't players who probably sound robotic, and maybe you don't, you know, like that style of, you know, playing and all that kind of stuff, super techie stuff, but I actually feel the exact opposite. I can't imagine not knowing some of the scales and stuff like that. Like, if I hear a sound in my head, and I'm like, what is, like, I hear that sound, and I'm like, oh, to me, that's like a very Lydian, it just sounds that way. Don't do that. But that is helping me, for one, hear what I'm actually hearing, and 2, play confidently. So much of like rock, for example, is the attitude behind it. So if you don't know even at least your pentatonic scale, I think it would be very hard to play confidently that you know these notes are gonna at least sound passable. You know, like if I was just guessing around at notes, I don't think that I could just, like, if I had a rock riff. Well, for one, I think it would be tough just to come up with riffs on the spot like that. But two, so I'm playing over that. You know, if I'm not confident, how am I gonna play with attitude and real, like, dedication to the notes and just, you know, really grit your teeth and... And all that stuff right there, that's all theory happening. That's scales and stuff I've learned. Or, you know, maybe I'm hitting particular chord tones if I went to the A. Oh. You know, right there, okay, I'm outlining the chords or something like that, you know. Maybe something like that, you know. Like I said, this is all theory happening, and it's just allowing me to play the way I want to, or at least understand the path to get to the point that I want. So, sorry for rambling on and on. I just think it's really important, and you know, don't let someone telling you it's gonna destroy your feel, you're gonna sound like a robot, all that kind of stuff. That's not the way that it happens at all. It makes you a much more confident and you know, complete player. Again, there's these guys who have this insane amount of theory. Paul Davids, you know, like I said, Rick Beato, they all are, on top of just knowing a lot of theory, they're amazing players, you know, and they can play all these different genres, all this different stuff. So I think that theory just helps you understand the conversation of music a whole lot better. So that's going to be it, guys. Until next time, hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you all later. Peace out. Woo!